Hello and welcome to the Kentucky Today podcast. I'm Lawrence Smith, the editor of Kentucky Today, alongside managing editor Mark Maynard, content editor Chip Hutchison, and our life issues reporter Tessa Redmond. Good to see you guys again for another week of news and discussion. I want to start with a story that's been gaining really a lot of traction, more and more traction over the last few days, and that's the hospitalization of Senator Mitch McConnell, the senior senator from Kentucky, his health status. It started June 14th. That's when McConnell was hospitalized following an emergency run to his home in Washington, D.C. And since that day, there has been very, very little information about his condition. And that has fueled lots of rumors, lots of speculation. Rumors such as he's in a vegetative state or on life support or even that he's dead. Well, responding to that outcry of rumors, so to speak, earlier this week, his office put out a news release pointing to social media posts of recent conversations that folks had with the senator to indicate that, yes, he is still alive. But again, little information about McConnell's condition and no statement from McConnell himself. So, three journalism pros here. What's your take on what's going on with McConnell and the information that has and has not been coming out? We'll start with you, Mark.
Yeah, one thing that really bothers me, though, is the way he's being treated on social media. It's been very ghoulish almost. People joking about him dying and that kind of thing. And, he deserves a lot more respect than that, as anybody would, really. You don't do that to people. You don't do that to anybody. I know he's not liked by a lot of people, and, we live in a divided world right now, it seems, especially politically. But to wish somebody to be dead, like so much has happened, I think it's just awful.
I agree. And Mark, you talked about him being, unpopular in some circles. The polls always say that McConnell's the least popular senator, but he always wins re-election. This is his seventh and last term.
Yeah, you know why? He does get things done, and while he might be unpopular to the general public, so to speak, I think we in Kentucky understand how important he has been to our state, really, and not just our state, but really he's been a leader in Congress for how many years? I mean, he's very respected.
40 plus, 42, I think.
Yeah, he's done an unbelievable job in that position, and probably time has come maybe for him to step down and be finished with it, and he has. His term, when his term runs out, he's already said he's done, and it's going to be either Andy Barr or Charles Booker that's going to take over. And it's going to take them. It would take them years and years and years to even come close to doing what he's been able to do in his time and his term as a senator. But overall, he's always been a private person when it came to his health, and that's kind of what's happened now. But all the speculation and all the rumors and all the nastiness that, of course, that X brings, that Twitter brings, Facebook, whatever, any social media brings. I think we're living in the worst part of that age, I think.
Oh, that's true. And that's unfortunate that social media is so toxic. But Chip or Tessa or both, do you think the public deserves to know more about Senator McConnell's condition?
Well, Lawrence, we don't know what we don't know. We're not sure exactly. We know the initial reports he had cardiac arrest, had to be resuscitated.
But his name has never been connected. It was at his home, but they never said it was him.
Right. They never say it was him. It's very difficult to, you try to put yourself in that situation. And now, is he different from us? Yes, he's a highly respected Senate leader, but yet he still is entitled to some degree of privacy. I think the silence that came in those days that following the medical incident that he had. Fuel of speculation. Is that unfortunate? Yes, it sure is. I think his staff was wise in putting out those reports by Scott Jennings and now Weaver and the Edmondson lady that put it this way, those were not fabrications. Those people had their reputations on the line. They would not tell something that was false.
That's true, but the fact is we still have not heard from McConnell himself, no statement from the senator himself. Tessa, do you think the public deserves to know more?
I do. And, Chip, I agree with you. I think it's a hard balance. Everybody deserves a right to privacy when it comes to what's going on medically, especially if there's something serious going on. But at the same time, as a politician, and if this is going to impact his ability to serve out any portion of the remainder of his term, especially as the Senate reconvenes soon, I think the constituents need to know, maybe not specifics, but at least more about what's going on, and how we as Kentuckians can support him through this, and certainly as Kentucky Baptists, how we can pray for him. But it's a hard balance, is how much does the public need to know? But the reality is, as a politician, I think we're owed a little bit more information about how this is going to impact his ability to serve.
And that's right. And it's not a matter of wanting to know the intimate details, but just, what happened? What's his condition? Is he able to work? When's he going to get out? That sort of thing. And Chip and Mark, having been in the journalism for a long time, the media has to be responsible in its coverage.
Yes, it does. And, I find it very interesting once we'll know more of the story in the days and weeks that follows. His staff, they could have issued a statement from him, but they didn't do that. And that does speak to, I think, to their integrity. I do want to mention something that Mark alluded to, the just horrific comments of people on social media about him. Senator McConnell and his staff were extremely helpful to our family years ago. 2009 is our son and daughter-in-law at that time adopted 2 children from Ethiopia. And I mean, we could not have asked for more help from them. And I know Senator McConnell has a great heart for adoption. People tend to forget the good things that people do and focus on the negative. But I do look forward in the days ahead to hearing more. And I do agree, we're eager to hear from him, just curious. And as I mentioned on our one of the things I asked to be added to our prayer time at chapel here at KBC this morning was to pray for Senator McConnell. And I would urge people, pray for him, pray for that, he will be able to at least address what has happened and will be able to function.
Mark, last word on this.
Yeah, I would say a little evidence would be good, probably. And I think it would quell a lot of the social media comments and just all the action that's going on there. Is a little more proof. Okay, yeah, he's fine, he's good. Even if it's a statement that quotes him or whatever, I don't know. I know they can't necessarily put a microphone in front of his face, at this point, probably, but I think any kind of proof of evidence that he's going to be okay, or he's getting better, or he's recovering, I think would go a long way to shutting some of the ugliness down.
Well, let's turn to a story that's flying under the national radar right now. A year ago, President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill passed Congress, and part of that bill was defunding of Planned Parenthood. That was defunding for a year. Most people don't realize that, and that year is about to expire. Tessa, that means Planned Parenthood will soon have access again to millions of dollars in federal funds, taxpayer funds.
Yes. Yeah, and actually, as of the recording of this podcast, they already have. That ban on the funding lapsed over the holiday weekend. And now Planned Parenthood, and really any abortion provider, it mostly impacts Planned Parenthood, but any abortion provider, now that they have access again to government grants and contracts and Medicaid reimbursement. And what's interesting is, Planned Parenthood abortion services account for 4% of the services that they did according to their, I believe, their 2024-2025 annual report, which is the most recent information we had, which is, of course, before the One Big Beautiful Bill cut off Medicaid reimbursements. It accounts for 4%, but they're still the largest provider of abortions here in the United States.
And now they're going to have access, or do have access. You updated that they're, in fact, do have those millions of dollars flowing back in again. So if our listeners, watchers want to do something about that, they'll have to contact their congressperson directly, because that provision in the One Big Beautiful Bill has expired.
Yeah, and I'll add too, Lawrence, that back in April, Senator Josh Hawley attempted to reintroduce that into a budget reconciliation bill. It didn't meet the threshold. So there are some politicians who are still interested. When it came to that provision coming up, it failed, mostly along party lines. Pro-life groups are still rallying. They're still asking Congress to address this, but they also need to hear from their constituents as well.
All right, thanks, Tessa. As we record this, it is pouring down rain outside. A flash flood alert here in this part of Jefferson County would mark flash flooding last week from rains that came down in torrents. But it's activated Kentucky Baptist Disaster Relief. Talk about what you found out this week.
Yeah, they've been busy as they always are, it seems. And I know one church in particular, McKee Baptist Church in Jackson County. They had 8-9 inches of rain and mud in their basement, flooded everything. It flooded a van completely. They lost a van, and they were in a tough spot. And a lot of people in that community were hit pretty hard. It's not far from Richmond, which of course we know seems like the epicenter of all that flood problem. But Kentucky Disaster Relief Team from the Lake Cumberland Association, I think there was 22 members, 22 members, went to McKee, and they got to work immediately. And in fact, the pastor wasn't there when they started. He'd been out of town. He came back in on Monday afternoon, and they were nearly done. And he was like shocked, because they thought it was going to be a 3-day job. And those guys, they just tore through everything, literally, tearing walls out and, getting everything ready. It's more than just sweeping up the mud and the rain. They do a lot of remediation work as well. But they did everything that they needed to do in like a day and a half. And so it's about twice as fast as they anticipated. After, when they were assessing, they said, yeah, this looks like a 3-day job. But those guys are nonstop workers, and most of them are nonstop talkers too, by the way, and they like to eat as well. So they were all taken care of. But the pastor there, Ron Maher, was so thankful for their work, and he said, it would have taken us weeks to get this cleaned up, and you really can't make it weeks. You're going to have to figure out a way to do it quicker. But with the expense, it didn't cost them anything. The workers came in, did the job, and they left that place dry. So, kudos to them. Just great team of people. Tommy Floyd was, I think, the blue hat in that crew. He was leading the way. Of course, he's the AMS down there. And Kevin Toney, who's the AMS in Irvin Baptist Association, did a great job too, not just with that church, but in that community. He had set up a stand, and they got some box fans, and they got some dehumidifiers from our disaster relief people, giving them to people, giving them water, giving them things like that, reaching out, praying with them, doing all those kind of things. He did a tremendous job. He was kind of the communicator, all through this, and he did a great job there in Jackson County and with McKee Baptist, and they're ready to go.
Ron Crow is the Kentucky Baptist Disaster Relief Director, and I talked to him about this flood response.
The response to this flash flooding from last week, this one has been very different because even though it appears it covered much of the state, which it did, it was very spotty because this was flash flooding that really was very pocketed in these counties. There were multiple counties affected, but it was very spotty. So that made it very unusual. And even emergency management just talked about that it was it's hard to plan because of that, because it was just small areas. Now those affected, obviously it was major to them, but when we look at Madison County, there was loss of life there. So that really made the news, which drew a lot of people to that area to assist with the cleanup. But we've had a family, for example, in Meade County that we've been able to assist, whose home was flooded. Jackson County, there were several flooded there, but in particular McKee Baptist Church, which was one of our Kentucky Baptist churches that were there helping. And then also in Clinton County down at Albany, they had a very localized area that was hit pretty hard, 10 inches in less than 12 hours that affected that small area there. So it's made it difficult to know how to respond and what resources to deploy to help those most effectively and use our resources wisely, obviously.
So what kind of work are you doing and what resources have you deployed to these various areas?
Okay, we've been working in Albany. We have some DR volunteers in the Clinton County area. Stony Point Baptist Church has been very instrumental. They set up a shelter with Red Cross initially. No one stayed at the shelter, but they did request a laundry unit and shower unit, and we deployed a shower laundry unit there. They had one shower that was given to the public, but the laundry was the greatest need. So they did quite a bit of laundry, and that's continuing on at this point. Probably going to wind down this week in that area. But they've been working out of the VFW, downtown Albany, serving the public with laundry. So that's the service we're providing there. In Meade County, we sent a flood recovery team to a family whose home not only was flooded by the initial flood, but because of the way the landscape was, their home stayed full of water for over a week. And so they finally was able to get the water out. And then we went Sunday night and Monday, and they did all the tear out and clean out for that. And then we have the local association and some of the churches that are going to help them with the rebuild. This family has a medically needs child, and so there's an urgency to help them get back in their home. And so that association is going to step up to the plate. In Jackson County, they also had, again, it was spotty. There was about 20 homes affected there. Mainly there was bridges. The private bridges were affected, which that's not something that we do. But that is a huge need in Jackson County. But McKee Baptist Church several years ago sustained 2 to 3 inches in their basement. This time they had about 10, 12 inches in their basement.
Wow.
And so our teams went down there. We had 21 people go down to McKee Baptist Church on Monday and completely do all the tear out and clean out. And then we've already sanitized it, and it's ready for rebuild. And through our Kentucky Care program, we're going to be able to help them with some resources to get them put back. Already have had the sheetrock donated to help put them back.
So the damage was not as widespread as it was a couple of years ago in the flash flooding, but as you said, those who were affected were really affected.
Right. Yeah, we did not have near the widespread, 13 counties in 2022 that were, massively destroyed and affected. This one was just very, very spotty. In 22, the rain obviously was a huge area that went through. This one was just pockets of heavy rain that really hit. And it was very, very unusual the way that it came through. So it did affect those individuals, obviously, but it wasn't as widespread in the numbers of people that it affected. So, and it affected them in different ways. A lot of more basements, a lot of more garages. And as I mentioned, the bridges, the private bridges, more in Eastern Kentucky. But then there were some homes that were utterly just destroyed, moved off their foundation, or even completely destroyed and washed away. We saw that with Million Bible Church.
I'm always so impressed and amazed by the disaster relief volunteers ready to drop whatever they're doing to go help. No matter how widespread it may or may not be, they're ready to go help. I know you had a crew, for example, in Indiana as well.
Mm-hmm. We did. We sent a team of 25 to Indiana, and if I was going to pick the hottest week of the year, I picked it for them to go do chainsaw work and flood recovery work. And but they served faithfully. The reports that I got from the locals as well as the Indiana counterparts up there was that our teams were just so gracious and eager to serve in a very difficult situation. I mean, they had some big jobs, big trees. and it was, in the 90s with over 100 heat index. But they just served and served faithfully with the love of the Lord Jesus Christ, and served up there faithfully. One of the comments from the pastor at McKee Baptist Church mentioned to me, he said, "I've known about Kentucky Disaster Relief Ministry, but this is my first time to experience it." He said, "I'm amazed at how much they smile and laugh and enjoy each other along with the hard work that they're doing. And it's hot and dirty work, but he says they are loving this ministry." So he got to see it firsthand in a whole new way. And some of our people literally took off work just to come and help, and took their own time and come to serve. And that's just the heart of our volunteers.
Well, thanks to Kentucky Baptist Disaster Relief Volunteers, thanks to Kentucky Baptists who make that ministry possible through the cooperative program, and the Kentucky Baptist Foundation, which helps provide resources to disaster relief. The team effort, everybody does a great job helping people in their worst times of need. Let's do some relatively quick hits here. Schools are out this time of year, and that means it's summer camp season. And Chip, you had a story this week about the impact of crossings camps.
Yes, crossings camps having another phenomenal summer. They've had over 900 professions of faith. Crossings operates 2 camps in Kentucky, one in Baghdad, which is called Cedarmore, the other Hardin, community of Hardin in western Kentucky, and it's called Jonathan Creek. And what a phenomenal ministry that is. And words are truly inadequate to describe how significant a role this plays in the development of not just young people, but the adults who are there as counselors. The staff is phenomenal. And the word, the Bible is front and center in everything that's done there. The staff is servant-hearted, work long hours, but they are dedicated to ministering to all those who come to the camps. They'll have some 25,000 people who will be at camps this year, the students and in the children's camps. Also, they operate in Maryland and in Tennessee. They have a few camps in those 2 states. What a phenomenal ministry. And as you mentioned about disaster relief, that is because Kentucky Baptists are faithful in giving through the cooperative program that helps to fund that work.
And Tessa, your church has taken its youth group, and which you helped lead that, haven't you?
Yes, we've gone the last 4 or 5 years. They were going even before Michael and I came, and we're actually leaving on Monday for our turn at Crossings camps, and our kids are very excited. We're going to Cedarmore. It's always a great time. They do such an excellent job just keeping the gospel front and center, even with all the fun summer camp things. So our kids are very excited.
We also had lots of coverage this week of the student worship camp for the 5th year in a row. Our KBC worship folks led people to come to Boyce College and Southern Seminary for a week of intense training, both musical training and spiritual training. We had a story, we had a video, and we also have lots of pictures there. So check out that coverage of the student worship camp, a very good ministry to prepare future worship leaders, which our churches so desperately need. Mark, real quick, you had a story about some troubling news about screen time in classrooms and the impact that's having on students.
Yeah, many of the legislators had a committee meeting this week and talked about what's going on in Kentucky classrooms and how much screen time is being used to teach, really. And they're kind of using that as the tool and maybe using that a little too much. And, even parents now are limiting, how much their kids use the screen time. And it's almost like some of the screen time has replaced teaching, the profession of teaching, and that's, we all don't remember a screen like you're going to remember a person, right? And I think Kentucky's looking at cutting back on some of this because, it's turned out test scores are lower. It's not really advancing kids like they want it to. And I think there's a place for it, but there's you got to figure out where it sits, and it can't be the main thing. That's for sure. We have great teachers across Kentucky, and we need to let them teach.
That's a good point. We do have great teachers across the country, across Kentucky, and we need to let them teach without having to rely so much on screens to do it. Chip, what's going on in Big Blue Nation? A former Wildcat arrested.
Yes, Kirk Rissa played at the World of College Athletics Day began at Arizona. He played at West Virginia. He played at Kentucky. Then he finished up at Cincinnati. And, we talk about the dangers of gambling, and we know there are arrests made in that, but this is something totally different. He's been charged with fraud, of defrauding people out of $2.2 million. And just a terrible story. Of pleading for money for family situations, him impersonating people in the family, and he's lodged in the Fayette County Detention Center. He was scheduled to play for La Familia in the basketball tournament, but he is not going to be in that. He's been replaced by Quade Green. He is also he's an Estonian professional basketball player, so we'll be following that story. But just a terrible story of somebody using their name and even then impersonating other people, trying to defraud them. And that is so repulsive to all of us.
Indeed. Well, let's end with some little fun things here. Kentucky Secretary of State Michael Adams is putting together a time capsule to be opened in 25 years, and he's soliciting from across the state submissions to this time capsule. So, if you had to put one thing in a time capsule to be open in 25 years, Mark, what would it be?
Well, I was talking to Beth about that after I knew we were going to be talking about this a little bit, and I was asking her, and she had a good one that she came up with, and that's the Keurig coffee machine.
Amen to that.
We use we use that all the time, and a lot of offices do, and a lot of people do. And 25 years, who knows? We might just get to automatically wish a cup of coffee into our glass. I don't know.
Chip, one thing in the time capsule.
Yeah, and mine was I was going to put a 1990. I was going to put a 1990 Reds baseball in there just to remind people that the Reds were relevant at one time.
I love that. I love that. Yes. Chip, what do you say?
I'm not as inventive as Mark and Beth are. I would print out 5 of the top stories from Kentucky Today that ran over this weekend, staple those together, and put those top 5 stories to show what life was like on the 250th anniversary.
That's great. Represent Kentucky Today. Tessa.
Yeah, that's very thoughtful, Chip. It was hard to choose something, but I think I'd probably choose a Stanley Cup because these have kind of had a cultural moment. And, we're so fickle with the products that we buy. So I'd be curious to see, what the water container of choice is here in 25 years.
Well, you see, I was the cheapest of the bunch. All mine would involve paying for a few pieces of
paper and staples, right? Mine would be an iPhone because it has taken over everything. People can't keep their faces out of their iPhones or whatever phone brand they have. So that would be my choice to put in there because it rules right now people's attention. All right, something I call care or don't care. Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce married in Madison Square Garden last week. Tessa, do we care or don't care?
We don't care, but it is interesting. And I'll say this because I think it's kind of, for a lot of people, millennials, older Gen Z, it's kind of a cultural moment. Taylor Swift is one of the best-selling artists of all time, one of the best-selling female artists of all time. She impacted the GDP here in the U.S. with her Eras tour. She's made a really big impact culturally. And of course, she's built her platform on singing about relationships. And a lot of those failed. And so it's interesting. I just think from that perspective, she's written songs along this certain vein, and now she's getting married. And 2, I think for a celebrity to be in a relationship for 3 years before getting married in this day and age, that's kind of interesting. 2023 to 2026 to a marriage. I think that's also kind of notable.
Well, that's a good answer. I'm not even going to ask the 3 old guys here. We don't care. Except it is good she's getting married. Maybe some of the Swifties will take that as a good sign and get married.
Yes.
And start having children. Last thing, Joey Chestnut kept his record for eating hot dogs 66 hot dogs in 10 minutes. Mark, how many hot dogs could you eat in 10 minutes?
I'm going to say 8.
8? That's
Wow.
not bad. That's not bad. Chip?
I think I can do
I
that.
don't think I could make 8 in 10 minutes, but I'd like the opportunity to try.
Dessa?
In 10 minutes.
10 minutes. He
Oh,
did
gosh.
66.
Maybe three or four.
Ah.
Maybe if I was really hungry.
I'm going to say if I were really hungry, I might be able to do 8 to 10 in 10 minutes, maybe one a minute.
Yeah.
But I would
And
feel
then,
terrible afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He soaks the buns too. You know that, right?
Yeah.
He
And-
that,
And that I would make that
Terrible.
distinction. Mine would be without buns.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. That would be
Alright.
easy
That
without
make a
buns.
difference.
Different,
Yeah.
different answer now without buns. So I think we could all get 8 to 10 without buns.
Yeah, with the buns,
And
it'd
I'll-
be a different story.
Yeah.
And be very sick afterward.
That's
Be
right.
Very sick.
That's right. Well, we'll try that occasionally. We'll do the care or don't care occasionally and things like that just to wrap up a little fun. Well, thanks for watching and for listening. Please tell others about KentuckyToday.com and please go to our YouTube page and leave us a review and subscribe there as well for more on the Kentucky Baptist Convention and the cooperative program we mentioned earlier, the cooperative program that makes this program and so much more possible. Go to kybaptist.org. See you next time, Lord willing, on the Kentucky Today podcast.